After several weeks of break, Formula One returned to continue the adventure of the 2026 season, arriving at a classic on the calendar that is a tricky, extremely demanding challenge between the walls. Canada welcomed Formula One back, giving us a race with serious implications for the championship, with battles, controversy, and some very interesting confrontations. Canada, for its part, says goodbye to Formula One for this 2026, but for us, it's time to summarize the biggest takeaways from the 5th round of the Formula One World Championship. This weekend we had a sprint format, so we need to give a quick summary of the Saturday race. Mercedes locked out the top spots, who for the first time in 2026 made good starts and defended their starting positions. Ross led the opening stages of the race against a very aggressive Antonelli, who tried to overtake him wherever he could. On lap 6, he tried to overtake him on the outside of turn 1. Ross pushed him off the track, starting the first controversy between the title contenders. An enraged Antonelli was shouting over the radio that his teammate had raced him dirty, while the Mercedes team tried to calm Antonelli down, but he kept complaining about his teammate's move over the radio. And a lap later, the Italian completely lost his head and went for an impossible move in turn 8 where he went wide, and Lando Norris took advantage of this mistake to overtake him and move up to 2nd place. Bringing the battle for the lead to an abrupt end, but starting the controversy, George Russell drove dirty by closing the door on Antonelli when he was overtaking him, and Antonelli lost his head trying to pass him on the outside. And further back, there were really few moves, the most notable being when Checo was battling with Lawson, but Lawson closed the door on him before the Wall of Champions corner, and Checo ended up being penalized for supposedly forcing the New Zealander off the track. The sprint ended with George Russell winning, Lando Norris in 2nd and Andrea Kimi Antonelli in 3rd. Obviously, the situation from the sprint left things tense between both Mercedes drivers, who we knew would battle again on Sunday, but in qualifying, Russell finished the job once more, beating his young teammate again in this battle and taking pole position. His closest rival this time would once again be Lando Norris, who would qualify 3rd, setting up a very interesting scenario for Sunday where this battle was going to heat up again. But there was still the question of how the Mercedes drivers would fight now, whether McLaren could pull off a surprise result this weekend, or if someone else would get fully involved in the battle for the podium places or the Grand Prix win. But the weather was going to be complicated, at least at the start of the race, because it was very cold and rain was expected to return. The start of the race was a real headache, since, with the threat of a brief but intense shower, several drivers would choose to start with intermediate tires. Like the Cadillacs, Williams with Carlos Sainz and both McLarens, who would take a basically all-or-nothing gamble right from the start of the race. But as always, there were surprises before the start. Lance Stroll would start from the pit lane due to changes in the car's setup, breaking Parc Fermé rules, while Arvid Lindblad couldn't even start the Grand Prix as his car got stuck right before the race began. This aborted the start, but after 2 formation laps and with the weather still uncertain, it was time to see who would take the glory in Montreal and who would win the battle at Mercedes. And once the cars lined up on the grid for the start, the lights would go out, and with that, the Canadian Grand Prix would begin. With the track still wet, Norris would quickly take the lead of the race ahead of Antonelli, who managed to overtake his teammate to move into 2nd, leaving Ross in 3rd. Further back, Lawson managed to gain several positions at the start, while drivers like Colapinto were able to hold on to their initial starting positions. But just a few meters after the race had started, the McLarens were back to being typical McLaren. At least regarding their strategies, they quickly realized it wouldn't rain anymore, and that the track was drying quickly, so at the end of that first lap, Piastri came into the pits to switch to dry tires, and a lap later, Lando Norris did the same, destroying in just 2 laps any chance of a good result for the world champion team. Therefore, the rest of the drivers on intermediates also ended up coming into the pits, leaving Antonelli in the lead, Ross in 2nd, and McLaren looking like clowns once again, and that's coming from a fan of the team. But Ross quickly started attacking Antonelli, trying to take the lead of the race from him. And Ross found the opportunity and overtook the Italian on lap 6, where Kimi almost ruined his race by having a small lockup just before entering the Wall of Champions corner, fortunately without any consequences for him. Further back on the grid, Verstappen was reminded of his 2021 battles with Hamilton, whom he would overtake on lap 9 to move into 3rd place. But up front, Antonelli regained his pace and came back with his usual aggressiveness to fight against George Ross. And for several laps, we saw an interesting duel between the two, even a contest to see who was overdoing it on the brakes more. In the hairpin turn, where both were locking up and both were giving opportunities to their teammate. But essentially, we were witnessing a very aggressive battle between these two drivers. While those two brought excitement to the race, the McLarens were self-destructing as they did in 2025. Well, Viestri showed his Taliban blood by attempting a reckless overtake on a Haas at the hairpin curve, which ended with the Australian driver crashing his car into Alex Albon's Williams, completely ruining his race by forcing him to retire, where he got a 10-second penalty for causing a collision that also ruined his own race. And later on, Norris would end up retiring from the race due to a reliability failure, leaving McLaren with a resounding 0 points. Returning to the battle, Kimi and Ross had been swapping positions and making mistakes at the hairpin turn, where both of them were once again having a very aggressive battle, giving the impression that at any moment these two were going to end up touching and causing an accident. In fact, sometimes they did end up touching. However, on lap number 30, Lady Luck once again sided with the Italian, because on that very lap, Russell's engine went off to the great beyond, where it seems the battery died completely. He was stuck on the track, Antonelli took the lead of the race, and at this point the championship became even more uphill and complicated for the British driver. This caused a virtual safety car, which Antonelli, Verstappen, Hamilton, Leclerc, Sainz and Colapinto took advantage of to make a pit stop. In the pits, where the latter had gained several positions, it was the best result for them, but along with the strategic mistake by McLaren and the champion's retirement, George Russell had already climbed up to 6th place. But when he came out of the pits, he made half of Argentina nervous, having a small slip that sent him into the wall, slightly damaging his front wing but not causing him to retire, so he was able to continue in the race. He basically kept the position he had when he entered the pits. The virtual safety car ended on lap 33, and with that, the battle for the lead was over, since no one had the pace to go after Antonelli and take the victory from him. The excitement was at the back, where we saw Charles Leclerc going after Isaac Hadjar, who was very aggressive, but Leclerc was trying to take 4th place from him in the race. He tried to overtake him on lap 35 on the Casino Straight, but Hadjar changed direction twice and in doing so, unfairly prevented the overtake, which is why he was later penalized with a 10-second penalty as well as a stop and go. However, Leclerc overtakes him on lap 40 and takes 4th place, getting the Red Bull out of his way. But up front, we saw a furious Hamilton who was gaining a lot of time on Max Verstappen lap after lap in a battle that was going to be for 2nd place in the race. But the string of retirements wouldn't end, and we would see another one, but this time from Checo Perez. His suspension simply gave out, causing his first DNF of the season. On lap 46, we had a virtual safety car due to a piece of Colapinto's front wing that flew off after hanging on for a long time, followed by another virtual safety car on lap 53 that ended on lap 54. After this, the race resumed with the remaining excitement being the battle for 2nd place between Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen, where the Brit was right on the rear wing of the Red Bull. He spent several laps chasing him, trying to overtake, but simply couldn't make it happen. However, he didn't stop trying, and on lap 62, he went for the outside of turn 1, positioned the car well, and with that, he managed to take 2nd place from Max Verstappen, who of course didn't give up and tried to regain the position a few laps later. But Hamilton didn't give him a single chance in the following laps and managed to defend the position that had been so hard to take. We also saw a battle at the back between Lawson and Gasly fighting for 7th place, but no matter how much the Frenchman tried, he simply ran into a Lawson who was an absolute wall in his defense. So in the end, these positions didn't change anymore. In the end, Max couldn't make another overtake against Lewis Hamilton, leaving the fight completely settled. But when lap 68 arrived, Antonelli won again in Formula 1, and with this, he became even more of a leader in the World Championship. 4th consecutive victory for Antonelli, who remains unstoppable, and with his teammates' retirement, he now leads by 43 points in the drivers' standings. Although they are not decisive, if he continues with this incredible form, they could very well put him on track in this fight for the title, which seems to currently belong to the Mercedes team. The rest of the top 10 of the Canadian Grand Prix would finish as follows. 2nd place for Hamilton, who delivers his best race dressed in red. 3rd place and a strong result for Verstappen and Red Bull, earning their first podium this season. Leclerc finished 4th, soundly beaten by his teammate. Hadjar takes 5th place, finishing there despite the penalty. 6th position and an amazing race by Colapinto with a great pace despite missing practice. 7th place for a solid Liam Lawson, 8th place for Pierre Gasly, 9th place and a brilliant result for Carlos Sainz. And closing the top 10, Oliver Bergman taking the last point. What do we take away from this race? I have to say that I'm really enjoying this race with the duel of the Silver Arrows, but once Russell retired, in my opinion, it lost a lot of excitement. The intensity dropped, the race stabilized a lot, although the Hamilton-Max duel kept me glued to the screen. Still, I feel like we lost one of the race's biggest sparks with George Russell's retirement. My rating for this Grand Prix will be a 7. It was an entertaining race, where we had a very frantic start and a somewhat lackluster finish. Like I said, it's a shame, but we lost the battle for the lead that we had today. But unfortunately, that's just how it is. My drivers of the day are Antonelli, once again showing that his pace is no coincidence, but that he is a clear and strong contender. Lewis Hamilton, who makes his pace count and shows up at one of his best circuits. And Franco Colapinto, who despite the damage to his wing and missing practice, his pace has been solid, very consistent, and that has allowed him to achieve another great result this 2026 season. And my disappointing drivers of the day once again are McLaren, who show that they learned nothing from 2025. I understand that they went for an all-or-nothing approach, but not splitting the strategies, doing the same thing with both drivers, making mistakes with both, and then having Piastri driving like a maniac and reliability issues with Norris makes it pretty clear that this team is the disappointment of this Grand Prix, when they were the only ones who seemed to have a chance to challenge the Mercedes team. But ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up our recap of the 2026 Canadian Grand Prix of Formula 1. But here's what I want to ask you. Did you enjoy the race? Were you disappointed? Who were your drivers of the day and your disappointments of the day in this competition held at the Gilles Villeneuve circuit? Let me know all your opinions in the comments section. That's all from me. If you liked this video, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to this channel, turn on notifications so you know when I'm uploading a new video, and share this with your friends. I also invite you to follow us on our Instagram accounts. My Twitter will be there too. The link will be in the description of this video, and I'll see you soon for more content here on your Skyline Racing channel. Thank you for tuning in and see you later.